Welcome to Lizards of the Toast, and we're busting out the old spice rack here. We have the extra salt here. This is some Himalayan chunky rock sea salt, so that should be just perfect. And to use the spice rack, we'll have to take the spices off. So let's go ahead and get those spices off the rack here. Perfect. Mediterranean herbs. Oh, organic sashimi togarashi. Oh, that's spicy stuff. Ooh, okay. So what is our spice rack all about? Let's get right into the salty bugger here. Now, speaking of salty buggers, was I not a salty bugger when grief was banned in my mono black scam rack? Bye-bye. See ya. Bandwagon, friend. Anyways, some people said you shouldn't use the rack anymore. They said you couldn't use it. How could you? It's no good anymore. It's dead. It's a dead deck. And I say, I have a friend named Torak, and I have some other friends named the Void Rackers, and they say no, not dead. In fact, very much alive. So let's get right into it. This deck is pure salt. It's probably the most boring deck you'll ever watch online being played. Then again, if you like the rack, it's the most exciting thing there is, right? So let's get right into this. Are you guys excited? I'm excited. I'm excited for Torak and the Void Rackers. And I came up with that one. Torak and the Void Rackers. You get it in that silly? Oh, gosh. All right. Oh, my goodness. Look at that. That's cute. That's not quite a gremlin, though, is it? Gremlins 3. When is Gremlins 3 coming out? So let's look at our gigantic creature base in the main deck, featuring Torak the Dreadcanter. He has protection from white. He's 1 and a black. You can kick him. And if you do, even though he costs 4 mana, you're going to get to have him enter the battlefield. It was kicked. Target opponent discards 2 cards at random. And whenever you discard a card, Torak gets a +1/+1. So when our opponent discards, +1/+1 on Torak the Dreadcanter. And in this deck, he gets huge, really big, a big fella. He gets pumped. He gets jacked, as the kids say. Anyways, what do we have here? Oh, these are our enchantments. All right, and yeah, we'll include Lily. So Bandit's Talent is a new card that I think is just great. So it kind of acts like a Wrench Mind. So each opponent discards 2 cards unless they discard a non-land card. That's 1 and a black. But the level 2... at the beginning of each opponent's upkeep, if that player has 1 or fewer cards in hand, they lose 2 life. So that's just going to happen. That's good. Not to mention, this acts as a secondary rack because there is a artifact wiper where 1 and a red will wipe the board because it's X in a red to destroy each artifact with mana cost X or less. So that one is easy to wipe the board of racks if they top deck it. This one is not, so this will stick around and finish the job. So we have 2 of these. Oh, and the level 3, of course, so we can add to the class. At the beginning of your draw step, draw an additional card for each opponent who has 1 or fewer cards in hand. So that's going to give us an extra card draw, which is really good. Then we can really swamp it on our opponent after that. Then we're really going to stick it to them. We run 2 of the Bandit's Talent. Now, Lily of the Veil. She is just so good in the deck because she's like a creature in her own right, because +1, each player discards a card. That is wonderful. But -2, target player sacrifices a creature. Imagine if somebody has a Murktide out and you fatal push a Murktide, -2 a Lily, and they have to sacrifice it. The -6 is not really relevant in Modern, and I've only done it like once, and it was a really weird, boring game. I don't even think we ended up putting the video up. It was so bad. It was even boring-er. I'm just kidding. More boring than the game we have up called the Morning Boring Magic. In any case, I digress. -6, you separate all permanents under target player controls into 2 piles. That player sacrifices all permanents in the pile of his or her choice. That includes lands, but that's more commander-centric. But we're running 1, 2, and 3 Lilies. Now let's get into that toolbox of arties. We have a toolbox of artifacts, and those are the facts. So, you'll notice a theme in this deck, and this is not intentional, but all of the cards involve doing things to a person's head, whether it be thought seizing, wrench minding. We'll see as we go through. Even smallpox, the card art. Look at all the art that involve head trauma. So, Pithing Needle enters the battlefield. Choose a card name. Activated abilities of sources with the chosen name can't be activated. And unless they're mana abilities. So that's a lot of things. That's many things. That's why we have one in the sideboard too, because we have so many targets for the Pithing Needle. That's pulling people's brains out their nose, I think is what this is for. So that's really good. We have one in the toolbox. We have a Nihil Spellbomb. It's nihilistic. If it's really a Nihil Spellbomb, why doesn't it even blow up? I mean, at the end of the day, who really cares? It doesn't matter. Tap, sacrifice Nihil Spellbomb, exile cards from target player's graveyard. When Nihil Spellbomb is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, you may pay 1 black, and that's a great thing to do. Then we draw a card. We have Shadow Spear. Now this is really interesting. So we can stick this on Torak, we can stick this on one of our constructs. That paying 1 permanents your opponent's control, lose hexproof and indestructible until end of turn. Very good. That's very good. And it doesn't need to be equipped to have that happen. It can just be in the battlefield. So that's really good. The equip cost is 2, but really for 2, you can get at something or interfere with somebody when they might not otherwise be interfered with. So 2 mana is good. Just like fetching this up with our Urza's Saga, and I'll tell you why we can do that. Usually in our old one, we had only 2 racks. Now, Relic of Progenitus is 1 mana. Target player exiles a card from their graveyard. Exile a Relic of Progenitus. Exile all graveyards. Draw a card. So we get this into our hand. Turn 3. Somebody could be having a graveyard synergy that's built up, and we can stop it just as it's about to really begin. Like in a Soul Trader deck, which lives at like turn 3. So this will ruin that for them. And being able to play it for 1, tap it for that ability, get rid of that key card, especially on their turn if they discard something. But our opponents will be wary of this, and being 1 mana, it is that board wipe for artifacts, that X and a red. I cannot for the life of me think of what it is. I run 2 of them in the Prowess deck. So here's the rack. Beginning of the chosen player's upkeep, the rack deals X damage to that player, where X is 3 minus the number of cards in his or her hand. So you're always going to want to target your opponent with this, obviously. And you don't really have a choice, so it is kind of interesting. As the rack enters the battlefield, choose an opponent. See, it's because it's the Duels of the Planeswalker. I think that was like a 4-player format at the time. So I'm guessing that's why they have that worded like that, choose an opponent. It's strange because we only have 1 opponent. Food for thought. But we have 1, 2, 3, 4. So we'll always get 1 in our hand early, and we may not need to, I don't want to say waste, but use an Urza's Saga to get something like that. So now let's talk about our 3 cards that we cannot tutor with Urza's Saga. Players can't untap more than 1 non-basic land during their untap steps. This is a great turn 2 play. Not only is it an artifact removal sponge, it will really mess up our opponents, because unlike my previous shell of this deck, the Scam Rack, which we ran 4 Fatal Pushes, and then we had the 5 Undying spells to work with our Grief, we had fetch lands. So this is really good, just having that many non-basic lands. Or, I'm sorry, basic lands. So this can really hurt any deck that's getting a little greedy with the mana base. We have Ensnaring Bridge. We're running just 2 of these. Now, this was one that we played and we removed it. But look at that one. We opened that. Are you guys there when we opened this? We were happy to get that. So, creatures with power greater than the number of cards in our hand can't attack. So that includes our creatures, but right now in the main deck there's only 2 creatures and there's only 3 in the sideboard. Now, we're going to have creatures come into the battlefield, but it doesn't matter if they can't attack at the point where we're kind of hell-bent on cards, just because by that time we should have a rack out and we should be kind of dealing some damage through something that way. So 2 of these, that'll shut them down. All right, Surgical Extraction. This is great for removing fetch lands. So turn 1, let's say we go turn 2. So our opponent goes first, they crack a fetch land and get something. Instantly we say fetch, get that fetch land out of there. Arid Mesa. Choose target card in a graveyard other than a basic land card. Search its owner's graveyard, hand, and library for any number of cards with the same name as that card and exile them. Then the player shuffles his library. So Arid Mesa gone. Wooded Foothills gone. We can get rid of a full playset of fetch lands, which is why I'm always cagey about running playsets. So, Surgical Extraction, we ran 3, but 2 feels better. Now, right now in the main deck, we're running 2 Fatal Pushes. And this one, Mr. Deschamps, did you write on my card again? Eric, why did you... What gives Eric Deschamps the right to do this? Oh, yeah. Anyways, Fatal Push. Destroy target creature if it has converted mana cost 2 or less. That's a lot of things in Modern. But Revolt. Destroy that creature if it has converted mana cost 4 or less instead of a permanent you controlled left the battlefield this turn. That's better. Things aren't necessarily leaving our battlefield each turn. So, that being said, the 2 Fatal Pushes in the main deck, they're there to remove prowess type creatures. Fast creatures, obviously. So here is a card that is unique to my 8-rack deck, like some of the other cards in here. Blackmail, target player reveals 3 cards from his or her hand. You choose one of those cards. That player discards that card. So, let's talk about this for a second. This is not one, unless you absolutely have to, and you should have mulliganed if that's your choice with this deck. So, like turn 2, 3, let's say your opponent has 3 cards in hand. They're going to show us those 3 cards, and we can make them discard a card, including a land card. So if our opponent's getting cheeky and trying to avoid our rack damage, we can say, oh, you're not going to play a land? Well, we'll make you discard a land. So this is what this is good for, is discarding lands after turn 2, ideally. So there's 2 of these in there. And in addition to killing peasants, punishing subordinates, and raising an army of nightmares, Braid somehow found time for her favorite hobby, petty extortion. Look at that guy. He's absolutely overjoyed about the whole thing. Don't you love these 9th edition foils? They're almost, in a way, I like these. It's so strange to see them, the 9th edition foils. In some ways, I like them better than the 7th even. Ooh, what's this? See what I said about heads being pinched and stuff? Look at that. This guy's grabbing his head. Take away a few things and a rebellion man sue. Take away everything and the oppression will be accepted as fate. So true. So we're going to take away a lot of things with this. Each player loses a life, discards a card, sacrifices a creature, then sacrifices a land. Now that's us too. That is definitely us too. But we don't care about that because we're probably not going to have a creature out. We don't worry about discarding our cards too much because we have so much card discard cards. We can always afford to discard something. So we just run 3 smallpox. 1, 2, 3. And the reason being, this card is the first spell I will sideboard in the deck. It allows us just running 3. We're not playing it all the time. Sometimes we'll hold it for just the opportune moments. So not using it all the time, 3 is good because we'll get 1 in our hand most of the time, and that keeps us very happy. Similarly, like, I like 3 as a number for somewhat consistency, but like with Torak, when we had 3, we'd always get 2 in our hand. I don't know if it was just a shuffle, but we don't want 2 Turaks. That's bad. So that being said, 2 Turaks in the deck is good. 3 is bad because this way we don't have but 1 chance of getting a double Turak in our hand. So like say we had 2 Turaks in our hand when we ran 3. We play a Turak, and then we draw a Turak and get 2 in our hand again. We don't want that. So this will never happen with 2 Turaks. Isn't that wise? Just like with 3 smallpox, when we had 4, sometimes you'd feel obligated to play it, and then it would hurt you more in the long run sometimes if you didn't play it right. But I still feel like this is one of the most powerful cards in Modern, and it definitely deserves a 3 spot, even if it is sideboarded often when we bring in Duthie, the other half of the Void Racker. So we have Wrenchmind again, somebody's head being snapped. Target player discards 2 cards from his or her hand unless he or she discards an artifact card from his or her hand. So most of the time, 2 cards discarded. We're running 2 of these. Just 2 of those. Mainly because of Bandit's talent. So we could run 4 of these easily. That is kind of a nasty sleeve. All right. So yeah, we could run more easily. However, I do think, there we go. Look at that. I think 2 of them's good because 1, it's 2 mana. We never sideboard it, so we don't need to add that 3rd. Get it in our hand, good. But because we get the Bandit's talent, I just don't think it is justified to have extra 2 mana discard spells. So, moving forward, here is one of our beloved cards. Look at something else being pulled from a head. Thoughtseize. I like my Thougtseize. You want some Thoughtseize? Are you playing footsies with your Thoughtseize over there, buddy? Target player reveals his or her hand. You choose a non-land card from it. That player discards the card. You lose 2 life. You lose 2 life. So, it's 1 black mana. We don't mind too much losing the life. And any card. 1, 2, 3, 4. With a lot of these big mana cards, Inquisition of Kozilek, not as good as it used to be. So we've cut it down to 3. Target player reveals his or her hand. You choose a non-land card from it with converted mana cost 3 or less. That player discards that card. So, 3 of these is good because we can target tons of things in Modern that you see. But I like 4 Thoughtseize, 3 of these. I like the 2 blackmails, and then the 2 blackmails in a way take the place of the other 2 Ravenscrimes. But because we used to run 3 Ravenscrimes, they actually take the place of 1 Ravenscrime, 1 Inquisition of Kozilek. So Ravenscrime's pretty good. Target player discards a card. But we can retrace it. You may cast this card from your graveyard by discarding a land card in addition to paying its other costs. So it has usefulness. We can pull it out of our graveyard if need be. Now let's talk about the mana base. Real simple. So Castle Locthwain. Just good late game. Draw a card and you lose life equal to the number of cards in your hand. It's going to be 1. Because by the time we use Locthwain. Hey, Locthwain, you need to lock it up, man. Bar's overrun with teenagers with fake IDs, Locthwain. Anybody knows the channel, we always make fun of Locthwain. Because it sounds like a character from Roadhouse. Locthwain's at the bar there taking care of business. So, Locthwain takes care of business. We get to draw a card and we lose life equal to cards in our hand, which is usually going to be like 1 or 2. We have Urza's Saga. We run 4 of these because this is super important in the deck. It enters, and after your draw step, add a lore counter, sacrifice after 3. Urza's Saga gains tap, add a colorless. Urza's Saga gains pay 2, create a 0/0 colorless construct creature. With this creature gets +1/+1 for each artifact you control. That counts for itself, and it counts for all the artifacts we have. So, we run 4 Urza's Sagas, of course. Because that is like a tutor for us. Even though it's a little slower, it doesn't matter because we are slowing down the game. Because this is a torture rack. And when you want to rack somebody, it's not like you throw them on the rack and just do it quick. We gotta bring this thing out, man. We gotta really lay the salt on this rack. We can't just have the game end. I mean, we'd play a combo deck if we wanted to do that, not a mono black control, right? So 1, 2, 3. There it is again, 3, and you'll see another 3. So Mishra's Factory, you can tap and add 1 colorless. Pay 1, Mishra's Factory becomes a 2/2 assembly worker artifact creature until end of turn, but it's still a land. What's cool about this, anybody that plays this will know this, but people that don't play Mishra's Factory may not know this, so I'm going to take time to tell. So let's say we pay the 1, it becomes the 2/2 assembly worker. So, if we do this on our opponent's turn, we play this, we declare it as a blocker. As we tap, or rather tap it, give the assembly worker +1/+1 until end of turn, declare it as a blocker. It's a blocking creature land that is +3/+3/3 basically. So it can give itself +1/+1 because obviously blocking does not cause tapping. So you just put the 1/1 on here before you declare it as a tap or as a blocker, And then you'll have a 3/3 blocker, which sometimes, not always, but sometimes can fool an opponent. And they'll say, wait, what? Yeah. But then they realize, oh, yeah, it's a dirty trick. And I think Wizards probably regrets it. But is the way of things. So 3 again. We just want 3 of those because it creates a colorless, and we're not playing a lot of colorless spells except our artifacts. And we really want that black mana quickly. 1, 2, 3 Urborgs. Now we played 4, but we kept getting multiple Urborgs in our hand. We don't mind getting 1 or 2 Urborgs, but when you start getting 2 Urborgs and then you draw another Urborg, that's bad. Or when you played an Urborg, you have an Urborg and you draw one, that can happen in this, but it's not going to happen more than once, so to speak. So we run 3 of those. And because we're not using fetch lands too, 3 of those is better than 4. Now, if you're using fetch lands, use 4, but we're not. So we have 11 swamps that are just basic lands. We have 1, 2. These couldn't get more basic than these swamps, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. 11 of those. So we are going to be able to untap these as normal when we have Winter Orb, right? Or Orb of Winter, right? What is it? What is that thing called? I always forget what it's called. It's not called Winter Orb. What is it? What is it? What is this thing called? Winter Moon. That's right. So when we have Winter Moon out, these lands are going to be available to us, whereas they wouldn't be available if we were doing other lands or more non-basic lands. Which, when you try to mix, like, some people think like adding certain colors to 8-Rack is a good move, but it really isn't. You don't want to deviate. You want to have at least, I think, like, gosh, I think I run like 16 discard spells in the main deck. Now let's get into that sideboard. Now here's the Doothy. So Doothy can very often take the place of, oh, you know what? 22 lands. Okay, so if I was running a play set of Smallpox, I'd definitely run 23 or 24 lands because there's so much land destruction. Now, because Smallpox finds its way out of the main deck so often and is often replaced with Doothy, that gives us an opportunity to just run 22 lands instead of 23 or 24 because we're not necessarily chucking lands left and right. So if we were going to put Doothy in, this is great in the deck. Not only is Shadow going to guarantee 3 damage, we can't block with Doothy. So we might as well attack every turn unless we want to get something in the graveyard. So if a card we put into an opponent's graveyard from anywhere, instead exile it with a void counter, sacrifice Doothy Voidwalker, choose an exiled card an opponent owns with a void counter on it. You may play it this turn without paying its mana cost. So say we're playing against some kind of devotion. We remove Scion of Draco from their hand, okay? If we have an untapped Doothy, tap, sack, Scion of Draco. I mean, that is so powerful. Not to mention damage spells, lightning bolts, whatever. I mean, and once we start really discarding and Doothy's out, we have a toolbox of spells to use with void counters. So 3 Doothys. Why not 4? We talked about this, right? So, Funeral Charm. We have 1 in here. Choose 1. Target player chooses and discards a card, or target creature gets +2, -1 until end of turn. So that card discard at instant speed is good. So nobody's top decking anything. So if we're feeling cagey, and this is in our deck, somebody top decks something, we have a couple racks out. Before they have a chance to destroy an artifact, we can go ahead and instantly have them discard that card they drew. Just 1 Funeral Charm. I used to run 3, but I find just this fits 1, and it's the only card that's, you don't have this card with a non-retro border. It's from the Visions, so. There's our other Fatal Push. If we find some creature-heavy stuff, Fatal Push will make its way in. Now, if we're going against stuff right here, look. Blood Chief's Thirst. So destroy target creature or planeswalker with converted mana cost 2 or less. Now, since Wrenn and 6 have seen less play, you see less of these in the sideboard. But then Modern Horizons 3 comes out with things like Ral and these planeswalkers. So this right here, destroy target creature or planeswalker with converted mana cost 2 or less. If this spell is kicked, instead destroy target creature or planeswalker. Kicking it for 4 is a bummer. It's not like we necessarily need to do that to get rid of the problem planeswalkers, or even using it as a sorcery speed fatal push. We run 3 because when we want it, we want it. Like if we're going against something with using some of these funky walkers we got nowadays. So 2 and 2 black, Damnation, Locthwain. What in tarnation and damnation, Locthwain? Destroy all creatures. They can't be regenerated. Simple board wipe. So something's problematic. We have Mutilate. Now this card grosses me out. All creatures get -1 until end of turn for each swamp you control. So that it's not going to be 11/11, but we have 22 lands. If we have all of them out, -22 on each creature. Such commander dreams. But generally giving creatures -2 until end of turn for each swamp we control, -3, whatever. If we have a few swamps out, we're going to wipe the board. But listen to this grossness. Liliana, who's in our deck, developed a fondness for the moment when roaring becomes squealing. And look at this black tarry substance that's engulfing these creatures here. Look at that poor little fox thing. Just terrible. But what can you do? It is 8-rack. Now here's a guy that's been in my 8-rack deck forever. Since Ashiok Dreamrender was released, we've used this in 8-rack. Before I even had a channel, this was in 8-rack. Spells and abilities your opponents control can't cause their controller to search their library. No fun. Shut it down. Hey, Locthwain, shut it down. Lock down the bar, Locthwain. Nobody's searching their libraries for a dang thing. Target player puts the top 4 cards of their library into their graveyard, then exile each opponent's graveyard. So, that... it's not a mill deck, but... right? Maybe? Nah, that's what we want. We want to lock them down. We don't want them searching for anything. Damping Spear. Now, we ran 2 of these. We ran 3. But now we're just running 1. If a land is tapped for 2 or more mana, it produces colorless instead of any other type and amount. But each spell a player casts costs 1 more to cast for each other spell that player has cast this turn. So, Storm decks, forget about it. This is really going to hurt decks that seek to move fast. And we may again move to having 2 of these with the Winter Orb. Winter Moon. 2 of these and 1 Winter Moon. I don't know yet. We're still playing the deck, but we're having such success with it, I gotta say. Grafdigger's Cage. So, Graveyard Recursion. Creature cards in graveyards and libraries can't enter the battlefield. So, that is going to hit a lot of things. Players can't cast spells from graveyards or libraries. Very good. One of them, we can tutor it up. We have another Pithing Needle. So, just in case we didn't have all of our fun saying Verdant Catacombs or something, we could say something else. Hex Parasite. Now this is a Planeswalker's nightmare. Remove up to X counters from target permanent. For each counter removed this way, Hex Parasite gets +1/+0 until end of turn. So this can take the heat out of Planeswalkers quick. And can also remove counters from things that say could protect a thing from removal maybe. I like Hex Parasite. I'm surprised we don't see it more. Look at these we got the Thick Boy construct there, and we have this Svelte construct. So we have a thickness construct, and we have a thinness construct. And the 2 work wonderfully together in the deck. So there it is. That's 8-rack right now, without grief. And so far, playing good. I mean, playing miserably in the sense that boring, but I think you're going to see more of it on the channel anyways. Thanks for joining me. We're at 30 minutes. You spent a half hour with me. So for the half hour you spent, we will present you with this. Oh,